Discover Help presents Stress-Free Living with Ray Samich and Mr. Stress-Free Ratanjit S. Sandhi. This audio program is an unscripted and unrehearsed conversation between Ray and Ratanjit. It is shared with you in hope of adding value to your life. We encourage you to listen to this program in its entirety to receive the full impact of its message. Sit back, relax, open your heart, mind, and soul to this edition of Stress-Free Living.
This is Stress-Free Living. I'm Ray Samich. Welcome to our program. I'd like to introduce all of you to my dear friend, my radio colleague, my spiritual brother, Ratanjit Sandhi. Ratanjit, how are you this fine day?
Wonderful, Ray. How are you?
Excellent, thank you. You look like you're seated, like you're just relaxing this morning, far back in your seat. Are you in a chill mode here today?
So you want me to come closer? Oh.
I always want to be close to you, Ratanjit, always. And we want to welcome all of our guests that are with us here on our Zoom call. That is a very special way for people to interact with us, not only in between the segments of the show, but also after the show. We always look forward to a little more involved conversation with all of them. But we welcome you however you may be joining us, whether it's on your radios or via an internet stream, on your cell phones, whatever it is. We are so grateful that you're here. I want to also mention that so many of our programs, not all of them, because we've had hundreds and hundreds over the decades, but a good amount of our more recent programs are on our YouTube channel, Stress-Free Living Radio YouTube channel. And please check those out when you have a chance. And any time of the year, if you're feeling, have a particular thought process or maybe a certain mood that is affecting you emotionally, visit that site because you might just find a thought there that we have discussed that perhaps can reduce some of the stress in your life and make your life just a little bit easier, which is the whole reason why we're together. Ratanjit, let's move on to today's topic. I have just found more recently, but on a regular basis, but especially recently, I've come into some situations where there's teaching going on, there's parenting going on, there's training going on. And the purpose of that is to obviously communicate knowledge, do the training and the teaching, the parenting to the students or the kids. And I've seen more and more times where that is also critically important to the teacher, to the person who supposedly is providing the knowledge. They seem in many cases to be learning more than the students, or sometimes it's equal, or sometimes it's more the students, but there always seems to be an education process going on when there's teaching going on. And sometimes it's reciprocal. I thought it would be worthwhile talking about that. Are we supposed to be teachers? Are we, as you say, wired? Are we wired to teach, but ironically doing that for our own benefit instead of the students that are supposedly receiving the knowledge?
You know, it's such a important question. The statement I'm going to make is going to maybe offend people, but you have to think about it. In what we live in a society where blind is leading a blind. What I mean by that is all our knowledge, education, training, experience, intelligence, title, trophy, awards, wealth, without comprehending who you really are, will end up remaining as highly decorated ignorance. So that is why blinds are leading the blind, because our teachers, our leaders, our parents, our grandparents, our society have not realized who they really are. And as a consequence, they cannot relate to their children or their students or any of these, because they have not incentivized them to understand who they really are. As a consequence of all this, ultimately, all our methodology, all our science, all our technology will not lead us to where we want to go until we recognize the instrument we are given, our own self. So it is very important for our society. So ultimately, you cannot skip knowing who you are, whether it's higher education or higher knowledge or higher intelligence. We have seen highly educated, very successful people end up committing suicide. What happens? Because ultimately your inner core asks you, so what? You got all this money. So what? You got all this education. So what? You have all this intelligence. So your own self-worth is not available to you until you know your own self, right?
Ratanjit, so often you begin these shows with a bold statement, and it affects the show somewhat. Today, you just really kind of threw a torpedo at me, because this is entirely different, just absolutely totally different than I had expected us to talk about. I mean, I figured we would talk about the process of teaching and the process of learning and communications and those types of things. You've taken this just to, a high, deeply spiritual level in terms of understanding who we really are as a soul, as a presence, as a being, a spiritual being having a human experience. And so that is obviously the ultimate thought. There's no doubt in my mind that that's where we need to progress everything in our life for complete fruition. But shy of that, just on an earthly level, just as a human level, are you saying that don't even bother discussing it? Don't even bother discussing this topic at a human level, because unless we do it at a deeply spiritual level, it will not ever have positive consequences? And do you know, Michael, understand what I'm trying to say? Is
Yeah,
I know we ultimately should get there, but can we still get somewhere meaningfully at a human level?
It's important to discuss that at human level so we know that all these things work or don't work. So let's explore that. So ultimately, we would conclude, we will prove that they are all decorated ignorance until you realize who you are.
Okay, that's fair. Humor me, if nothing else. Humor me on the topic here, so we can still take it down a human path, and then I'll realize the weakness of my ways. That's fair enough to do. I've learned a lot of things over my lifetime by doing things the wrong way, so that's okay. So let's go back to the basics of it. A teacher who is so learned, they have degrees upon degrees and they have experience for years. But I think if you will talk to many teachers, and I have two of them in my own family, two of my children are in the teaching career, they will both tell you that they are still learning as they are teaching, not from books and not from courses they're taking, but from the experience that they are giving to their students. And adapting the knowledge, being able to adapt the knowledge that they're teaching to actual practical applications is also making them more aware of what they're doing. So let's talk about that concept first. Is that necessary? Should we all be doing that? Should we all be instructing others on any aspect of life, giving advice, recommendations, encouragement, transmitting knowledge? Is that supposed to be part of how we're wired, so that that's a sneaky way, if you will, of us learning more?
It's a very good question. You cannot immediately tell them who they are. It's a process you have to begin slowly, slowly. Ultimately, you monitor them into this ultimate question of exploring who they are. So if you tell a small kids or small person or a student and understand who you are and nothing else will happen, it won't happen. So initially, it is, although there are two aspects of education. One is the education itself, so knowledge itself, which we are giving to students. Secondly, you have to get them ready to accept that knowledge. So we have no curriculum which is preparing the student to accept that knowledge. So as a result, they are rejecting that. They are saying, what is the purpose of this? Where are so many people who have made billions without education? So education is not as important. So we have not prepared them. We have not made them curious. We have not made them realize that they increase their own self-worth through gaining this knowledge and understanding and ultimately taking on these responsibilities. So, I have to give a little example. Before I do that, I invite some comment from you.
Well, you didn't answer my question that I just asked. You went down a path that I definitely want to follow. I love the idea of preparing people for knowledge. And I do agree, certainly, that if they're not in a mindset of learning, then they're not going to learn. So that's really critical. So we definitely have to talk about that. And you mentioned a term, self-worth, that we have to have self-worth. And I don't know, and I want to explore that with you, if the self-worth has to be established before they're willing to learn, or if that's a partial consequence of learning. And so we want to go there. So you've introduced two new branches on this tree that I wanted to go out on. But my first question was, are we wired to teach? Is that something, I don't think that is something that most of us think about. And I'm not talking about teachers. I mean, obviously teachers have chosen that career path. And there's a group of people that are teachers or trainers by career. I mean, in general, were we designed to be teachers as an effective way of our own learning? Is that something that we should always look to do in our life, to be teaching others and indirectly benefiting us as well?
This teacher is a misnomer. It is impossible to be a teacher. You can only be a student. Only student can teach other students. So if the teacher doesn't become a student, she or he cannot teach. So that is fundamentally wrong with our system. And we are a society of experts. And we call teacher, we give them a degree or some experience. And so, okay, you are teaching. they stop learning. They stop being a student. They lose the capacity of teaching. Only student can teach students.
Okay. And I think therein is the answer that I was looking for, which is yes. I think then that I know we're all supposed to be students because you've said that a million times before. So if we're all supposed to be continually a student, then we need to do that in order to be teaching. So yes, I think we haven't communicated real effectively here so far this morning, but I think I've gotten the answer that I was looking for. All right, we have a few minutes before our first break. So why don't you go back and give me that example, if you still remember it, before I deterred you. Which way did you want to go in terms of an example that you felt was important for the conversation?
It's very critical to, with this example. So there is an organization which is called Values in Action in Cleveland, and subchapter of that is Project Love. And I happen to be associated with that, and there was once I was the chairman of that organization. And we were approached by Collinwood High School in Cleveland by the principal, who was aware of this organization. And he brought to us a very difficult problem. He said, our graduation rate is very low, especially it's even lower for the girls. Girls not only graduate below 45%, they have close to 30% as pregnancy rate, and they do illicit drugs, almost 70%. They hardly go to college. Nobody graduates and goes to college. So we put together a program which is called Believe to Achieve. Now, at the end of this whole program, once they go into this high school, it starts from all the years of high school. So one of the counselor worked with them on, so end result is the graduation rate jumped from 45 to 82%. Pregnancy rate from 30% to zero. Illicit drugs, 70% to 10%. College enrollment from zero almost to 60%. So what did we do? We did not change the curriculums. We did not decorate the school or change the environment. We basically counsel them to ask them these fundamental questions. Does your color define you? Does your past define you? Does you know who you are? So understanding these things, continuously working with them to evaluate that, their self-worth automatically increased, and they started focusing on the core purpose of life. And the fundamental question was, what is your purpose of life? So these questions, when we ask them continuously and have them discover these answers, you ultimately reach close to who you are without answering this question, who you are. So this experiment was so powerful, although it was not accepted by school board and all that. They basically wanted the old methodology of testing and this and that. They're invested in bureaucratic systems and they are not getting anywhere. So this was an example of what I'm talking about.
Those statistics are just overwhelming. I mean, to be at such depths and to increase them over a 4-year period for a new, I'm assuming that's like a new class of students coming in 9, 10, 11, 12. And then what happened to that group after 4 years of that is, I mean, that is off the charts in terms of success. So let's take a break for a moment and come back with that concept of teaching self-worth, of getting our self-worth. We've already established here that when we teach, we learn. So at the same time, that self-worth that we are teaching to our students can be taught by our teachers, and our parents can be learning as quickly and as efficiently as the kids if these types of programs are instituted. Let's talk about that when we come right back on this edition of Stress Free Living. Please stay with us. All right, we have a moment here away. If anybody would like to have a comment or a question, please do.
They have already left us. We have gone bonkers.
No, it's going very well, which is fine. It's really many things. Actually, are we designed to be a teacher? I don't think so. We just share our experiences.
Yes.
That's all. Not
Designed to
as
share
teachers.
experiences. Okay.
Right.
Okay. That's a
That
good
is
take.
what I feel.
Thank you, Doctor.
As long as ourselves separate, we're not going to be effective, right? We have to connect with those that we are trying to teach and have compassion and empathy in order to have a real connection to make a difference with them and not be preoccupied with ourselves.
Absolutely.
A
Absolutely.
great take. Okay. Thank you.
Well,
Anyone else have a
John
quick-
Dewey has written a lot on education and how it can affect the humanity and other things. I think some
Sorry,
of the
say that again,
points
please. Say that again, Doctor.
John
I missed
Dewey.
it.
John Dewey, there's a philosopher on education.
Okay.
He has written a lot on the humanity and education and democracy and human rights and human values and how the courses are related with the human values.
That
A lot
reinforces.
of work has been done. He was, I think,
Okay.
from Chicago or something. I forget about him because he has written a lot.
Okay. That reinforces then the path we're following. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. We're back on. We are back on Stress Free Living, interacting with our Zoom guests. If you would like to be one of those so that we can talk with you and you can ask a question that I then relay to Ratanjit, please contact us and we'll be happy to pass along that special dedicated Zoom link that you can join us with. And we love seeing your face and talking with you and interacting with you during every show. Ratanjit, I definitely want to go down the path that we will go down in just a moment, but a couple of comments that came through. One is that one of our special guests says that they look at teaching as simply sharing our experiences, that we're not designed necessarily to teach, but we're designed to share what we have learned, what we have encountered ourselves. That kind of takes us to a whole different definition of what teaching is. Are we, anytime that we're communicating based on fact, not based on necessarily opinion, but based on what we've experienced, based on what we've seen and what we've learned in our own life, maybe that is what I'm talking about when I'm saying we all are supposed to be wired to be teachers. What do you think about that? Is that a human necessity for us to share our experiences that we've had, our wisdom that we've learned, if you will, in life with others? Is that supposed to be part of the human process?
Fundamentally, when you are a teacher, you are telling them you are automatically taking a superior position. When you are sharing your experience and basically you are becoming a student and you are telling them, hey, this is what I have found, this is what I have experienced. So there is much more tendency to be open and listen. So there is such an experiment which is worth mentioning. So what is essential for good education, fundamentally? So normal wisdom tells us you need experienced and well-educated teachers. You need seasonal administration and management. You need well thought out, established curriculum. You need well-designed modern facilities. And you need to prepare this curriculum so that students going through that are well prepared for job market. And they must be supported, this whole program must be supported by community and establishment, and you have ongoing funding available to support this, right? These are fundamental.
Agreed.
So what happened, there was an amazing experiment in the remote part of India. And this gentleman who was a coach was challenged by administration because he was challenging the status quo of education. So he was challenged to start his own school, which he did, with basically orphan girls. And today, that institution has 5,000 students, girls, and it starts from standard 1 to PhD. And fundamentally, there are no teachers. So it removes the first thing, experienced, well-educated teachers are required. And secondly, there are no management or no administrators.
Who teaches, Ratanjit? I have to cut you off. I mean, if there's no teachers, I mean, that's who teaches? 5,000 students and no teachers?
Yes, the senior student end up teaching the junior students. Basically, our learning happens when we teach. When we share our understanding, we teach. And this institution has no funds which it takes from government or private donors. It is self-sufficient because students are given the management. Every month or every week, they are on different duties, either cleaning duty or growing food duty or cooking duty or all kinds of experience. Though these students, when they graduate, they have holistic education. They understand how to balance the checkbook because they are managing the financial aspect of the institution. And then they are encouraging creativity among students. So they produce certain items which they sell. And this institution has over 30 acres. They grow their own food. They produce their own electricity. They have their, if they want to add another building, guess who does the construction? Students. So now, if we evaluate them, how do they stack up with our highly funded education institutions? When they compete in national competition, generally they score first 3 positions, tops, and they are highly in demand because they are not prepared for a job, but they outperform the conventional students because they have overall understanding, and all this ends up giving them the self-worth. They have basically taken responsibility as a consequence of that. They deliver this responsibility, which builds your self-worth. Ray?
That's a fascinating story. You've shared a little bit of that with me in the past, but not to the extent that you just did. To think of that holistic approach for not only is that so critical that you're learning all those things, but you're learning it at the early ages when that is transforming these young minds, these young open minds that are so interested in learning, are so open to learning at that age, and you're filling those empty minds with all of this holistic critical information that they can do anything, they can be anything, they can learn anything and learn it well. I mean, that there's no wonder why that is so extremely successful, is because it has everything. It has every wonderful component to it. Let's go that self-worth. That was a great example of it, but you also had mentioned that earlier. We've done other shows talking about that our world is all about net worth. We all strive for net worth, and we don't even think about self-worth. And that's a problem in our world. What do you, aside from opening a school like you just gave as an incredible example, what can we best do to increase the self-worth of students and teachers, if you will, parents and children, everybody? How do we, it seems like the world is breaking us down. It tells us what we don't have. It tells us what we should have and don't. How do we acknowledge better the value that we have within ourselves?
Ultimately, you have to take on responsibility and deliver them, which gives you higher confidence and self-worth. So until you take on responsibilities and deliver them, self-worth is just, it doesn't, ultimately what happens is when you go to college, you get a degree, and so you have increased your self-worth. Oh, I'm successful. I have a master's degree. And similarly, when you win a gold medal in the Olympics, you have increased your self-worth. But every self-worth, every success, remember, every success only gives you a platform to add higher value, take higher responsibility. So if you want to maintain your self-worth, which is given by so many factors, by either trophies or medal or success or degree or gold medal, if you think you have gotten your success, you've gotten your self-worth, that's it. It will erode itself because you have to continuously use that platform to add higher value. So it's a journey. It's not a destination. Self-worth is continuously requiring you to add a higher value than you did before. Right?
What's interesting to me is that anytime that I've received a trophy, symbolically a trophy for doing something well, when I get that, there's a joy. Obviously, you like to feel good about getting something. But then you look inside and you say, okay, so I do this thing well. Okay, I ran this race well and I won it. But you also know that there's so many other deficiencies within yourself. Okay. And it almost is like there's an inspiration that goes on that says, boy, if I could do everything as well as I ran that race, okay. But there's also the realization that says I'm not doing everything as well in my life as running that race. My point is that sometimes those trophies don't really build up your self-worth. Sometimes I think they point out our inadequacies that we know inside. Maybe other people don't. They see us as that incredible runner, but we know that that's not really defining us, and that there's a lot more that we need to do in our life besides win that race. How do we get the rest of us? How do we inspire the rest of us to have more self-worth about who we are, feel better about who we are, even if we win that trophy or not?
So we talked about being a student for life. So self-worth comes via the studenthood. So constantly, that's why it doesn't matter whether you are 60 or 10 year or 20 year or 100 years old, you constantly are looking for higher knowledge, because that is, you constantly want to learn more. So it's our innate desire to constantly upgrade your knowledge, upgrade your understanding of things. So that means you are a student. That means your self-worth is constantly coming via the door of studentship. So as long as you are a student, you are learning, you are increasing your capability to add value, and you couple that with responsibility, which is your purpose, always is to add the highest value. So your knowledge gives you the tools to add the higher value. So constantly you are sharpening your tools, you are being a student, and then you follow your purpose of adding the highest value, which is ultimately combined together gives you self-worth, right?
We're getting somewhere now. Okay, compared to where I felt at the beginning of the show. Because if building our self-worth helps us to want to learn more and helps us to be prepared to learn more, then, and if we've gained self-worth by what we've already been able to learn and by being in the student mode, and since we learn when we teach, and we've learned that we're desired to at least share experiences, if not necessarily, if we're not all designed to teach, but we're all designed to communicate our own experiences effectively. I mean, I can see how this is kind of a holistic approach, using your incredible school as an example, a holistic approach to building our self-worth through sharing experiences, through continuously learning as we are communicating effectively. So it doesn't seem that hard now. I mean, if it seems like it's something that everybody is able to do, to build our own self-worth by being in this student mode, by sharing our creative experiences and expressing our wisdom that we've learned through life's experiences. This seems to be something that we can all grasp. So if it's that easy, if you will, if it's that accessible to do it, why is the self-worth of humanity so low? I mean, why is that such a prevalent problem with people not having self-worth if it's kind of as simple as we've just laid out?
I want to cover this question by answering that you have not become a true student. So how to become a true student, I want to cover that after the next break. If
Okay.
you want to take a break.
So, okay, we can do that. I think I could be patient for a couple extra minutes. All right. So we're going to take a break. You're teaching me patience. See, I'm trying to be a student here. We will take a short break here. We are really dissecting this topic here today about teaching. Who is the student? Who is the parent? Who is the teacher? Are we designed to be teachers? Is that something that is important for us? Since we have a minute that before we officially we're supposed to go to break, I wanted to share one of the thoughts too in the last during the last segment when we were with our Zoom people about the need to connect with other people, not to be preoccupied with ourselves. And I just thought, just as a statement to share that bit of wisdom, anytime that I've tried to teach somebody without being connected to them, I mean, that's the first element of any communication, is to have empathy for knowing who they are, where they're at in their life, to kind of put yourself in their shoes, to use the old adage. And she was right on with that comment. So I wanted to share that too, because that is, we could talk about that for an entire show, but it's an important element whenever we're trying to connect to somebody. We need to have the empathy of knowing where they're at before we deliver the information. And there again, if we take the time to do that, then we are more in a student mode as well. This is Stress-Free Living. We are going to come right back and wrap this topic up. Please stay with us. All right, everybody, your turn.
Ray, Steve Marsh speaking.
Yes, Doctor.
Welcome, Doctor. How are you?
I'm wonderful. So this spoke to me on so many levels. So it really, in many ways, goes back to added value, and I can only speak from personal experience. As a dentist who does, and the word we haven't used is mentor. So I try to mentor as many younger dentists and students as I can. And for example, this Wednesday, a young dentist is coming in to learn about cosmetic dentistry. And what I find is when I teach them, they will tell me they learn more in a day than they learned in 2 or 3 years of dental school, where they're sitting there getting not a real experience. When they're in the office, when they see how we work, when they see what we do, it's worth many years of sitting in a classroom, which is sort of your example of the school in India. And I know that when I'm providing value from them, for them, they're appreciating it, and I learn because they ask questions. So it is mutually beneficial. But it's when you're adding value, teaching that other person, they learn on a practical way, and you become better at what you do because you also come back and analyze what you did, why you did it. You're speaking out loud. The patient hears it. It's mutually beneficial, but it's in a very practical way. And that's what I think mentoring does. And mentoring, again, to me is the essence of teaching.
Thank you.
Very good. Well, good. We will relate to that. Thank you. We probably have just a few seconds left. Anybody else have a quick thought? Quick question? Okay, stick around after the show, folks. In about 10 minutes, we will let you have the floor. I'd love to hear all of your thoughts on this. We're back. Welcome back to Stress-Free Living with Ratanjit and Ray, yours truly, Ray Samich. Thank you so much for being with us here today for our conversation about teaching. Who is the student? Is it the teacher? Who's learning more? Is the teacher learning more, or is the student learning more? Ratanjit, I know you've got an example here that you wanted to share with us, and then I want to get to some of the comments that were made again during the break. So go ahead and answer my question that I asked you a long time ago.
So the essence of all this is coming down to becoming a true student. Conventional student always wants to be better than others. The true students strive to be better than themselves, fundamentally. So conventional student is always very proud of their achievement. The true student is always grateful for their achievements. And conventional students generally works in the center of ego, fear, and greed, which is driving it. whereas the true student, truth drives every thought and every action rather than fear. And that truth, as we know, is basically oneness. So others, the true student always sees a competition, others as friend or enemies. The true student sees the divinity, not enemies or friend in others. Conventional student is lost in I, me, and mine. I did this. I achieved this. This is my resume. Whereas a true student practice everything selflessly. And conventional student looks for trophies and worldly recognition. The true student looks for inner bliss. And conventional student always says, I'm doing my best, I'm doing my best, and basically part himself or herself in mediocrity outcomes. Conventional, the real student committed himself to make their best better. Constantly, it's a journey, constantly thinking, how can I improve this? How can I make it better? And the conventional student, the motivation always comes from outside sources, external trophies, external titles, whereas the true student is internally motivated. It doesn't, he or she doesn't need any trophies or medals. And conventional student is always lost in dream big, dream this. Whereas the true students lives in the present. And conventional student focuses on worldly knowledge. The true student dedicates of knowing the truth. What is the truth? And as a result, he or she becomes explorer. So ultimately, the conventional student is driven by what is in it for me, or self-centered, whereas the true student is dedicated to add the highest value. Finally, the conventional student is parked in destination. He or she is destination driven. I want to achieve this. Whereas the true student is journey driven. Medal or trophy or recognition is just a part of the journey. So that is the basic difference in, I can go on, true student and conventional students, right?
Obviously, that's one of your works that you have written. You've done that so many times on different topics, and I don't think I've seen that one before. So Ratanjit, if you'll share that with me, that document, I'll put that on our YouTube site along with this show and share that amazing bit of wisdom there, because I think it may not be real clear, but I think therein is the answer to the question that you made me wait for the answer so long for. Why is self-worth not more prevalent? Why are there so many people without self-worth? And I think you're telling us there to be that true student, okay? It's easy to say we're a student. It's easy to say we're always in a learning mode. And that's, in a ironic way, it makes us feel humble to say that we're students, but if we're not being a true student is actually a big act of ego, to pretend that we're a student when we really already think we know it all. So if we can become a true student and practice those virtues that you just so eloquently stated, then I think the self-worth would automatically appear. Doing it for the right reason, doing all of those things with the right intent of adding value. So definitely we'll share that document and include that in the program. So, and that explains, because that everything you've just compared, when you said conventional to true, I think most of us probably related to the conventional side of things. Maybe we don't want to, but I think we kind of fall in that category most of the time. So again, just like the person who won the trophy, deep inside, they know they're not really all that great at everything else. For us that we think we're a student, deep inside, I think we know that we need to be that true student, not the conventional one. I wanted to get back to one of the things in the closing minutes here. One of our guests on the Zoom call at last break talked about the fact that they, as a mentor, okay, which is a different, it is a teacher, it's probably synonymous in a dictionary, but I look at a mentor differently. I look at the mentor as the combination of what you talked about earlier when you said, if you're sharing experiences, then you do it at a different level than as a teacher coming at the students. You're not teaching down, you are communicating across. And I think that's what a mentor does. He or she communicates based on the difficulties I've had in my life and what I've learned, what my challenges were, and this is how I failed sometimes, and this is how I overcame them sometimes. And as a mentor, you also have to have, as one of our guests said, you have to have empathy. You have to understand what I was like when I was learning this and what you're like when I'm telling this to you. So I connect with you to share my experience. It made me think that should for all of our advancements in technology that we all know is around us, and students today at 6 are what they used to be at 10, and students at 12 today are what they used to be at 18 in terms of their intellectual capacity. Do we need to go more to a mentoring mode as opposed to a teaching mode? Is that part of the solution, where we are communicating at a different level of empathy, a different level of connectivity, a different level of even sharing, not out of a book, but out of life, like in your college example in India?
You cannot be a true mentor until you convert yourself into a true student. And it's only in that mode you are a better teacher, you are able to share your wisdom and experience. Because if you are typical mentor, you are unconsciously taking a position of superior role, and you know it better, you have experiences better. So as a true student, you are converting your mentorship into true sharing. When you truly share, and that means this is what I have noticed, which is incomplete, and you want to take from this position into a higher stage, because that is the challenge you are giving to other person you are mentoring. So until you become true student, you are not capable of becoming a mentor, or you're not capable of becoming a teacher, you are not capable of becoming a student, you are not capable of becoming a parent, you are not becoming capable of a leader. So ultimately, true student is all we can be, and our purpose remains constantly adding the highest value by making our best better. So this challenge is It doesn't matter what roles you play, whether you become a senior CEO or you are subordinate, because ultimate purpose, it remains the same for all of us to be part in a true student mode. And true student mode comes from recognizing that enlivening power which enlivens us all.
So ironically, the best teachers, the best mentors, the best humans are going to be the true students. All
Yes.
the more reason I need that document from you. We'll post that up on our page to go along with the show, so you all can see that in more detail and really ponder that for yourself. Ratanjit, thank you so much. This has been a really enlivening show for me. I've really enjoyed it. Hopefully our audience has as well. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and your love with us. And thank you for being with us. We will look forward to seeing you again. Remember, folks, we're all playing the same game. Have a great day. All right. Thanks to Jacob up there for letting me go over. I went overboard there. We did the terrible thing in radio. We went long. But now you all have the floor. Everybody, please share your thoughts if you would have any with us. Now we have no more time constraints.
This is Ken Mehra. I'll take a crack at it. I just want to share my thoughts. It's not in any way, shape, or form teaching. It's a more of a discussion open. I think I'm a little bit more overwhelmed by today's discussion, so I'm going to try to comment and ask you questions in a more organized way. I think when we are talking about teaching, I personally think that teaching happens in three forms, or discussion happens in three forms, or learning happens in three forms. One is totally verbal, like theory, discussion of theory among people or group of people or alone. You learn laws, physics, theory, chemistry, medicine, and ideas. The other is verbal and practical. For example, you're learning theory and you're making gadgets, you're learning making cars, you're fixing things or whatever. And the third is nonverbal. The nonverbal is a perfect example where parents are setting up examples and kids are learning from them, and there's no verbal communications. You're setting up examples. I am this. If I drink, I take shots every day and tell children, don't drink. Do you think it's going to work? No. You have to set up examples if you want to teach children, and they will learn it immediately. Same thing. People learn from role models. Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan doesn't go to everybody and say, you play basketball. If I want to learn, I look at him. How did he do this? And I will learn from him, or I'll get an inspiration to learn from him. So with these three thoughts, when we talk about teaching and learning, an individual, when he learns by theory, by practice, by nonverbal, I'm adding value to myself. I'm constantly trying to improve. I think what Ratanjit is pointing out is, in addition to theory, to add value to ourselves, we have to change our behavior too. If we add value by learning theory and doesn't practice it, it's useless. And he always said that to me, that when you learn something, you have to change your behavior. You have to change your habits. What we are talking about today is, when you have added value to yourself, you can add further value by sharing your thoughts with others. So if you are an expert surgeon, you don't teach anybody your expertise, your discussion, your experience. Ultimately, when you die, it's going to go away. It's just like Steve pointed out. He does a wonderful job of making, prosthetics or whatever. If he doesn't share, ultimately that is going to go waste. But when he shares it, it adds more value to the society. To me, that's still learning. It's not like you teach and you stop learning. During the process of sharing your thoughts, discussions, you are learning and you are adding value to the society. I'm sorry, that's how I felt today. It's a long, I blabbered too long, so I'm open to discussions and questions and your comments.
Right?
Ratanjit,
Your comment.
my comments first.
Hmm.
Absolutely, totally agree, Doctor. I thank you for sharing that, and you don't blabber. You've never blabbered. I blabber, so I can speak from experience. The idea of really teaching beyond theory. Okay, and I have a special place. I already mentioned I have two children who are teachers. My son and my daughter-in-law are both teachers, and so I always try to tell them, as much as I love them and appreciate what they do, just to teach out of a book, just to teach a theory, to use your term, it is a waste of their time. If they can't connect people to the value of what they're teaching, if they can't put that into practical terms to use that knowledge in life, to learn from it in a way that's meaningful, then they might as well just be whistling in the dark. It doesn't do any good. And so what you have shared and what Dr. Steve have shared in terms of communicating your experiences and making that real to people to be usable, I think that is the ultimate value. And your legacy sometimes isn't what you do when you live, it's what you leave behind for others to continue with indefinitely, because we're only here for a short time. And yet what you've learned, what you're teaching, could theoretically and practicality go on for generations as it gets passed along, especially if you're taught it in the right way. If you've taught it in a way that people receiving it are also willing to share that and share that at generation after generation. So I think you've hit the nail on the head, so to speak. Ratanjit, your thoughts? Brother, did we lose him? Oh my goodness. What do we do without our leader here? He has disappeared from our screen. I didn't realize he was gone, and he's not trying to get back in. I don't know if there might be a power loss or something. Wow, I feel helpless without our spiritual leader here.
Well,
I will watch. Go
this
ahead.
is Doug. It's
Doug.
interesting to see what we do without our leader. Wow, without our teacher. It's
Without
hard to learn to here.
I
But,
know.
just a couple of real basic things. I think obviously everybody is a teacher and a learner. It's too bad that some of the things that we're taught aren't all that great, but they're still teaching stuff. On the negative side, we have people who teach that stuff. But the experience. Somebody mentioned, one of your guests mentioned, being based on your experience, and then you related to it also with don't just teach out of the book, but give examples of real life situations. That is so important, I think. On a kind of a scary note, and I probably shouldn't bring this up because I don't know this for sure, but I get the feeling Ratanjit in the beginning mentioned, know yourself, know your true self. That's the important part of all of this. Know whether you're a great runner, but no, I'm not so great at chemistry, but you realize that. But I think I just get the feeling of what I hear and see is younger people today don't have that. They seem to be content with less. you're okay with, yeah, I don't care if I know that. It doesn't matter to me. I kind of get that feeling. And I don't know if it's a true for you or not, but that's pretty scary to me. So anyway, it's a great show, by the way. It's just made me think about a lot of things. So I appreciate it. And maybe Red can just back and can really clean this
No,
up.
he's not back, and I've texted him too, although he turns his phone off. So I can only suspect he's in an area, if you know where he lives, where they are a little prone to power outages and things. And there's some winds, very gusty winds going on out there. So I suspect maybe he lost internet or lost power. One of those, I think, because he went down so quickly. Kim, do you have a thought?
I do have a thought. And Doug, I appreciate your remarks regarding the apathy that some of the students seem to have, like not feeling like they have access, to improving their lives. So they've just kind of settled. And at the beginning of the show, Ratanjit talked about, he gave statistics, in Collinwood, not knowing who you are and not valuing who you are, makes a difference. So to me, in a teaching environment, who is it that's showing up? Who is it, the student? And who is it that's the teacher? For many years, I came out of an environment where those statistics applied to my life, to my community, where 8% of the kids were passing the proficiency test and 80% of the families were living in poverty. And I was a teenage mother. And I remember I started selling insurance as a young, like 20, out of high school. And the woman training me, she was talking to me about retirement. And I was so scared in the neighborhood where I grew up that I did not expect to live more than 25 years. And when she started talking about planning for retirement, I said, I don't have to worry about that because I'll probably be dead by the time I'm 25. And she said, don't ever say that. You create when you speak. And it jolted me. But for many years, I lived with net worth and self-worth collapsed. And because the numbers were so low, I did not feel like I had value. Net worth and self-worth had to be unpacked for me. There was a narrative, and it wasn't until I got to graduate school that I learned to write a redemptive narrative, that I could change the narrative. I obviously had something inside of me that I wanted that was more, but that wasn't what I was seeing. So this conversation just really touches my heart. Again, I think that we have to really question, who is it that we are when we show up in the classroom or in a teaching relationship? And who is it that we are trying to connect with? Because there is a trust barrier when you are going into these environments. You definitely can't just come from academics. They're surviving their lives, right? It's not just about what's in the book that's being shared. It's Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the basic needs, right? I think about, I'm in real estate. 2% of commercial real estate is handled by minorities. The rest of it is white men. And its access is an issue in Chicago, which is where I live. There was a construction manager. I just shared this story very quickly. A construction manager who wanted to make a difference in this area. So he started trying to hire kids from these distressed neighborhoods. And there was a problem with transportation, and one of the kids wasn't going to make it to work. So this guy who's committed to mentoring sent an Uber for this kid. The next day, the kid's two best friends were hanging out at a place where they normally hang out, and there was a drive-by. One died, the other one's on life support. He said to the construction manager who hired him, who paid for him to get to work, not only did you give me an opportunity for work, you saved my life. Like the kids who have the backpacks and they're riding their bikes to Google, making $180,000 a year, their learning environment is very different from the kids who grow up in these distressed environments where they have lack of resources. Right? So anyways, to come through all of that and land on the other side, there's so much that a mentor, a teacher, a coach, or a trainer is dealing with. It is not just academics. It's who the person is. And that's how Ratanjit opened up the conversation today. Asking these kids where they made these extraordinary results with the stats. Do you know who you are? Your self-worth. Does your color define you? Many years ago, I went to someone, a coach. I said, please help me get my life together. And she said, you don't have a money issue. You have a heart issue. You are grieving for your life in your community. Fix your heart issue and the money will come. And boy, was she right. So I just want to say, as an educator, you know, I have a student who gave me a mug. It says she teaches from her heart. And when I am in a teaching mode, I am seeing myself over there with them. And I think that's what gives me the gas to keep going. It's not about the 45 minutes or the 2-hour class that I'm teaching. It's about me really wanting to impart what is in my heart and experience to them. Whether I ever see them again, I vicariously win if they can take one thing from me and make their life better as an educator. And I think that that's what we have to bring if we are trying to make a difference with others. We're truly creating a world that works for everyone. We have to know who it is that we are speaking to, and we have to know who we are in the midst of that. Thank you for letting me share.
That was wonderful, Sharon. Thank you. And I think I've got Ratanjit on my phone, and I think he was able to hear most of that. And go ahead, Ratanjit, go ahead and speak.
Beautiful hearing your example. So thank you very much for sharing. So ultimately our purpose remains the same to have.
Can you hear? Are you able to hear Ratanjit through my phone? Everybody, just point out if you. Yes, did you hear him? No, I'm not getting any. Are you able to hear him when he speaks?
It was broken up and it stopped abruptly, but I hear him.
All right. Okay. It's not obviously the best use of technology here, but so I don't know if you'll be able to hear most of his comments. And of course, that's where all the wisdom, well, I shouldn't say all the wisdom comes from him, because we're just hearing some wonderful things from all of you over the last half hour or so since we've ended the show.
No.
Oh, can you? Oh, there you are. Okay, good. We're admitting him back in to our call. There he is.
Okay. I don't know what
We
happened.
all felt like helpless lambs, Ratanjit, without our shepherd.
No, everybody has tremendous wisdom and experience. And when they start looking at things in the right manner, they find certain wisdom in their life. It's the right eyesight which makes us evaluate the good out of the bad. So each.
All right, we've heard such wonderful things from most of you. Dr. Singh, Jakshit, we have not heard, I don't think, from you post show. Any thoughts from you?
It was a wonderful talk, and he gave an example. There is another example in Punjab also. In Gurdaspur, the same type of school is running, where the elder student teach the younger students, and they manage everything.
I was giving the example of the same school.
Yeah, that Gurdaspur school, the Punjab.
Yeah.
Okay. I was thinking that you were giving in the South Indian school.
No.
Okay, that is one of the best. I might be visiting it next month.
Yeah, please visit and let us know.
Yeah, give us an update on that.
Yeah, I'm leaving for next month, so maybe I have already in my schedule to visit that.
Yeah,
so and I fully say that once the self-worth and the education, as earlier one of the speakers has said that there's a verbal, practical, and non-verbal. I fully agree with him. There's a lot of things which the people learn by your actions. And there is another thing which the humanity has passed on, because the earlier generations have been passing on the information. So teaching has been a regular process throughout our period of our life of humanity even. So passing on information, maybe it is wordly, maybe it is the other way, how we organize the societies, how we organize ourselves, everything that has been passed on. And other thing which is very important, which we have to learn, as you have already said, that every person is a unique individual by himself. So all these teachers and students, they, whosoever, I should call them teachers because that is the name which we give it to the people who run the school or everything. When they interact with students, every student is a unique student. So that has been a learning process for the teacher to learn how that uniqueness comes and how that uniqueness has to be interpreted, and the best use of that uniqueness is to be done. And I think that part is missing from most of our schools. It doesn't bring in creativeness, it doesn't bring in that uniqueness or the perfection in that uniqueness which the students should be there. If somehow they are able to achieve that, then we will turn up into a good human being.
Yeah. Instead of
That is, yeah, instead of, as you have compared the students who are sort of achievers and the other students, you have very beautifully compared it. And I think for each point, we can have a full 1 hour discussion on
Yes.
each one of them, going into those details. So that was a good, and we would like to hear more on that. Thank you.
For sure. Thank you. Who else? Doug, Steve, anything else? Or anyone?
This is Doug again. I just will tell you that what I mentioned about the younger people today, Kim put it in 10,000 better words than what I possibly could. What a great example. But she's a great, great teacher. And I think she also pointed out maybe at some time in your life, you're much more in the student mode. And then later, maybe in your life, you're more in the teacher mode, even though I agree, you're always teaching and being a student and being a teacher. But I think maybe at some points in your life, you're more one than the other, if that makes sense.
Yeah. When you learn something, when you share, you become a better student, because when you are sharing, you're also listening and you are also understanding what you telling somebody else. So you are, my mother used to say, I have 2 ears and 1 mouth. So when I'm speaking, I must also listen. So teacher in me is teaching, a student in me is using my ear to understand that what I'm teaching. So you always remain in the student mode.
I think also, though, as we get older, we realize that there's, as the expression says, more in the rearview mirror than in the front windshield. And so I think the importance of communicating and leaving that information that we've learned, I think we realize even subconsciously that's an important phase of our life that we should get into. So at least that's working that way for me.
Very good.
Do anybody else? Any last thoughts today? You are all wonderful. Ratanjit, they really did exceptionally well. I didn't have to say anything while you were gone because they filled the show with wisdom in your absence.
Yeah, you are recording that. I listened to it.
You will be able to hear all the comments that were made.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. You know what? I think you've laid the path here for part 1 and part 2 of this show, and
What
we
is
will
the second?
use.
What is the second? What is the next week's
I'll
topic?
think of the title. I'll get the title to you. I don't know the title yet. We'll figure that out. But I think it is going to be the essence of what you read, the conventional versus the true student. I think we can pick up a lot of content from there. And plus, I've made some notes of what we've talked about here post-show. So I think we'll build this into continuing the idea of teaching and studenting.
Thank you. And
all right.
Yeah, there is a lot in that conventional student, and
yep,
there's a lot can be said about in that.
We will do that. So we'll continue with that. Thank you to everybody. Have a wonderful week. And we
Thank
will
you.
talk to you again, hopefully next weekend. Thank you.